Hi everybody and welcome back to lecture. Today we're going to take a few minutes to discuss a very important part of your research papers, and we're going to specifically focus on your methodology sections today. And when we talk about a methodology section, you could really think of this as a blueprint of sorts, and the blueprint is really meant to explain to the reader all about the steps and the processes that you took to conduct your study and how you went about it. So what we're doing today is we're discussing really the actions you're taking to investigate your research topic and the reasons or the justifications for why you took those specific steps. So think of this as not only just the blueprint, but the justification for that blueprint. If you were an engineer and you were making a real blueprint because you're designing a building or a structure, part of that would be that you would have a wall over here and your roof would be pitched just so, and you would have a support beam here, right? And if somebody asked you, well, why did you put that wall there, or why did you put that support beam here, your justification would be something to the effect of, well, the support beam is load bearing and I have to put them every so often or the second floor would cave in, right? That's an easy justification to explain why you went about taking these specific steps. So you have an action and you have a justification. And in the methodology section of your paper, it's just that simple as well. So if you wanted to study a specific group of people, or you wanted to include the specific variable, right, that's your action, and then you have to explain to me the reason why you did so. And that's basically the same as explaining why you put a support beam at this specific location within the structure itself. So as you're writing this methodology section, I want you guys to remember that you need to include as many details as possible. If I was trying to replicate your study and the only thing that I had with me was the paper that you provided me, your work should be detailed enough that I could move step by step through your details, and I could replicate it without any sort of problems or questions. Sorry if you can hear the sirens behind me, but somebody's going somewhere. So anyway, as we're talking about this, the methodology section is important, because if you don't write a reliable methodology, then others could really step in and question the validity of your research and consequently the findings of that research that you have conducted. So it's very important to provide a strong methodology with a strong justification up front, so then the back end of your work, meaning the results, become a lot easier for you to be able to accomplish and finish. So with the current study that we're focusing on within the context of senior seminar, we're really going to be focusing on things from an empirical perspective, and that means a data-driven perspective. So in more advanced research, you would be putting together a research study that relies on more advanced statistical analyses. But for the purposes of your research with me, we're really only going to be focusing on things at the univariate and bivariate level. So very simple, sort of basic analyses that you guys are going to be doing. But by using this empirical approach, meaning a data-driven approach, we're really focusing on a few things, and it allows us to do a few things with that data. So we're really able to develop some sort of objective knowledge. We're able to answer research questions in a yes or no sort of fashion, and we're using operationalized variables that can be quantitatively measured, and that's what we're going to be doing here in this section. So this is an approach that is focused on providing an explanation for specific questions that we want to have answered. And in the layout of the paper, I've provided you a really nice little outline on Canvas as to what sections should be in the paper and the order in which you should include them. But whenever we're writing a methodology section, we always want to start off with sort of a rehashing, if you will, of the research topic, the reasons why we're studying this topic, and why it's important for us to look at this specific issue. So it means that we're starting off with an introduction to sort of the overall methodological approach that we're using to investigate research problem X, right? So For all of your studies this semester, you're going to be using quantitative studies, meaning that your data and your variables are going to have a numerical sort of um, approach, or a numerical sort of way in which we're going to be measuring our variables. So they're not open-ended discussion questions. You're going to be able to quantify the results in some way. So we're going to be collecting data, and in the data collection process, you have to sort of justify the approach in which you're finding your data. So if you're going to be collecting data, as you are, you need to explain to me why you're doing so, and you need to connect it to the overall research problem that we're stating in the beginning of the methodology section. So in other words, what you want to do is to make sure that your methodology is addressing the research problem that you are introducing at the beginning of the section. Excuse me. One of the biggest common deficiencies that we find in our research papers is that the methodology somehow doesn't fit with the problem that we are trying to explain, and then other researchers call into question whether or not your results are valid. So we really want to make a strong push at the beginning of this section to say, this is how I'm going to collect my data, and that is an appropriate way to do it based on this problem that I am studying. And in doing so, you need to be very specific about how you're collecting data, right? So in this survey, in this study, all of you are going to be creating a survey, and you're going to be asking people to take your survey. So it's a pretty straightforward data collection process. But in other types of research, you might be using an interview, you could have a questionnaire, you might be using observational or archival types of research analyses. So if you were doing something more complex, you would have to have a stronger justification in there for why you were using this chosen methodology. But since you're all using a survey, like I said, you're going to have people to fill it out. So now we have to focus on who those people are and why you chose them to take your survey. So you have to tell me all about your sample, right? And provide a justification for why you chose these individuals and how you went about sampling them. So for instance, in your surveys, maybe you only want to survey parents, right? You're focusing on a topic that is related to children, so you only want to talk to people who have children. That makes sense. Maybe you're focusing on women's health, so you only want to survey women. Maybe your study has some sort of religious dynamic to it, so you only want to study people who are part of a specific religion, right? These are all justifications for why you would have a very nuanced, targeted sample in your study. So you have to provide that justification. But for the purposes of your study, you're going to have more of a representative sample here, so there's no reason for you to target people who are of a specific gender, race, religion. You want to have more of a diverse group of community members in your actual study. You also need to provide me as much detail as possible about the variables you're going to use and how they're going to be operationalized. The operationalization section of the paper is important because it really allows your reader to understand exactly how you measured your variables. So if you're looking at race and your questions only ask people, are you white? Answer yes or no, right? That doesn't tell me anything else about the other possible races that they could be. Only that they are white or they aren't, but it doesn't tell me any more information than that. The same thing if you were to ask me about my age and you said, are you 20 years old? Answer yes or no. Well, you would know the people who were specifically 20, but you wouldn't know anything else about the people who answered no, so you're really limiting your participants' responses significantly, and that's not something that we want to do. So the operationalization section of the paper really allows you to describe your variable formation process, and then I am able to look at those variables and sort of correct the measurements before you actually go out and survey people with your actual instrument. So I know that this might be a little daunting to a few of you the first time that you've done this, but this is something that you should have done with Dr. Bailey in the methods class already. But in case you need a refresher or maybe you're just a little confused, I've provided you with a bunch of really great resources on Canvas so that you can better understand the process by which variables are operationalized. And then at the end of your methodology section, it's always just a really great idea to address any possible limitations that you might see pop up. So are there any practical limitations to your data collection? Do you think maybe you're not going to be able to find enough people, or do you think maybe you would have to expand it beyond the select groups that you had previously identified? If there's sort of any methodological problems that you can anticipate, this would be the perfect time to be able to introduce them and sort of show why you're pursuing this specific methodology, why that outweighs any sort of risk that you might see popping up with those limitations. But the other thing that I want to just talk about real quick, and then I'm going to wrap up, guys, is the idea of details don't mean fluff. So I want you guys to provide me with a bunch of details, but I don't want you to just provide me a bunch of filler. And that's a thin line sometimes with some of you, where you're just adding extra information to give me extra page length, but really that's not an exercise that we're trying to focus on here. We're trying to focus on the specific details that are informative enough while still being concise, right? So one of the reasons why I had you guys write your literature reviews before your methodologies was so that you would be able to look up a ton of relevant background information that would help you to be able to complete the methodology section of the paper. And once that section is done, you're going to be able to breeze through the creation of your survey because you've done all the hard work already. So on Canvas, like I said, I've already provided you with a whole bunch of really great resources that help you with the methodology section of the paper, and then also help you with the operationalization of your variables. So if you need any help, please reach out to me. I'm willing to help all of you guys if you need it. But please read those documents first before you start the methodology section and before you start asking me questions, because a lot of your questions will probably be answered by those documents. But even after that, if you guys have questions or you just want to clarify anything, I am here to talk to, and I will help you through whatever you guys need in this section and through the survey creation section as well. So if you don't have any questions, then I look forward to reading your methodologies and to providing you guys with great constructive feedback so that when you go to do your surveys, you're just breezing through. So thanks guys for your time and your attention today. I hope that this was helpful to you, and I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you back here next time. Thanks. Bye.